conversation today. Now, as we are nearing the eighth edition of our annual sustainability conference, which is from October 27th to October 29th, we would like to give you a glimpse into yet another interesting discussion at the conference. Now, this session particularly aims to engage with key stakeholders and understand that what is the feasibility and scope for application of a sustainability based frameworks for farmer producer organizations. Now, let me just take a step back, talk about our theme. The theme of the conference this year is accelerating and reinforcing transformative change for societal resilience. And if we are talking about societal resilience, I don't think that we can ignore our farmers, especially the smallholder farmers. So, keeping this very important topic in mind and also understanding that it's not just about mitigating the negative impact, but how do you really apply and push for the positive impacts. So we are pleased to partner with India Foundation for Humanistic Development on this rather important work. And Aruna, who's actually traveling to Germany, has taken the time to speak to our audience. And Aruna, who is the chairperson and advisory committee for IFHD and the executive director, will be in conversation today with us that what is the work that they do with FPOs and the role that she accords, in the well-being of smallholder farmers, and what is the work that CRB and IFHD are planning together. So Aruna, welcome. Rather early morning for you, so thank you so much. But just for the benefit of the audience, can you provide a brief overview of IFHD and the work that you do with farmer producer organizations? And from your experience and perspective, why is it that FPOs are extremely important when we are talking about empowerment of smallholder farms? So Aruna, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Devyani. Thank you for also this opportunity to speak with you on LinkedIn Live and to have many others who are part of this ecosystem that we are trying to address through our work together. So just for a brief, in terms of India Foundation for Humanistic Development, my organization, we work with a vision to rejuvenate productive landscapes equitably and sustainably. So we have basically three program areas, and we believe all three of them are contributing towards our goal of greening economies. And one of the program areas called PROCIF, Producer Catalyst and Incubation Facility. This is basically a rural doorstep rural business incubator for FPOs. We work with them through their evolution and growth path that they would set out for themselves. Wherein we start with perhaps in terms of the social mobilization process, where we bring in farmers, smallholder farmers together in terms of their aligned economic goals, and then handhold them through the process of registering a company in their name, becoming producer owners, and then thereby creating an entity, an institutional vehicle that brings a certain unit of scale. That's unfortunately or fortunately, if you look at it historically, and in look at economic pathways, our smallholder farmers have been kind of left out of that game of economic, going beyond subsistence farming, only primarily because of this unit of scale. And that unit of scale is defined by mainstream business. And to address that, FPOs are institutional vehicles that were enabled through policy changes under the Registrar of Companies Act to help farmers to come together and register a company, and that then say 1,000 farmers come together, register a company at an average of say 2 acres or 3 acres per farmer. That's a huge parcel of land in terms of its produce, as well as in terms of being able to cater to mainstream definition of scale. And this process has started a while ago. As IFHD, we've been working with farmers since 2013, and so far we worked with about 130 FPOs in 19 states and 82 districts, with addressing perhaps the support required for about 120,000 farmers And with PROSIF, what we generally do is we provide doorstep services that are related to access to finance, access to technology and technical assistance, and access to markets. So that the company, an individual farmer actually is able to transition this journey from a standalone farmer to an enterprise farmer. And then also the other aspects of actually running a business defined by the mainstream markets and rules. So this also enables access to credit, which is an important part of a farmer's needs. At a standalone level, 2 acres of whatever produce he has over 2 or 3 seasons, and compare that to a 2,000 acre parcel of land with multiple produce by different farmers, and the kind of legalities involved, the kind of accounting needs that are there, the kind of professional management support, and then the role of governance in terms of the farmer members who are members of the board and directors. So the entire approach is completely different. And so that's where we believe that farmers do need that capacitating, and they do extremely well in that transition, we've found to our experience. And these crucial 2 to 3 years of perhaps enabling this transition where we come in helps them to start engaging directly with mainstream markets and buyers at scale. And also to perhaps we taken PROSIF into the next level, where we working with these FPOs who have had certain experience and maturity in trading at scale, to now perhaps move up their value chains and look at from trading of produce to value chain development to production to marketing, and adopting green practices and renewable technology. So this aligns with our vision to having a greening economy portfolio of work.
Yeah.
And so that essentially is covering our work under PROSIF. We do have other couple of program areas. We work on PRORASA, which is promoting resilient and sustainable agriculture, as well as PROHABITAT, which looks at habitat conservation. But all of these align themselves to our greening economies goal.
Yeah. Thanks, Aruna, for that very comprehensive background. And I'll come back to the sustainable aspect, but I think a couple of points that you made, the bottom up growth, taking into account the needs of the smallholder farmers, right? And bringing them together at scale. So I think that resonates very well with our philosophy also, that how do we get the unheard voices in when we are also talking about multi-stakeholder collaboration. So I think some fantastic work, and you have laid down on the challenges and how IFHD is actually working on addressing some of the challenges, that a mindset of managing a 2 acre plot and actually combining together and running as a company. So I think fantastic work. But I'm just building on your question, because you did mention that FPOs that have come to a certain maturity, that are trading at a certain scale, then what is the next step for them, and what is the importance? So, and it's I would also like to probe this and get your perspective, because we also hear, we do understand the challenges that FPOs are facing, and we do understand that there are issues around governance and capacity building and access to technology. But despite that, we also feel that it is the right time, that as they're looking at integration into value chains and the next level of maturity, that perhaps a sustainability lens or an alignment to SDGs could help. So what do you think about that, and how do you think that this can be done?
Yeah. So if you look at, I mean, I think the world agrees and has agreed a while ago. A number of countries have most of the countries have signed up on the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And if one has to, and this is on the basis of research put out by FAO and other organizations. If you look at the 17 SDGs, 14 out of those 17 SDGs have a direct impact on agriculture. And when you look at the domain of agriculture and you look at India, and its performance on the SDGs, with 2030 being the target area. You look at the government of India's as well as the various states, like the Niti Aayog tracks the performance of every state and puts out this information in a transparent manner in terms of the performance of various SDGs performance of each of the states. Uh, so, I mean, say for Karnataka, where IFHD is based in Bangalore, Karnataka, the SDGs performance, the ranking on the whole for among the states is 6. And that 6 out of how many of the states that are participating in this. And when you look at that as a country and you say, okay, fine, each state then can set itself a target as to how they continuously improve their performance along specific parameters of the SDGs. SDGs is actually a framework that lays out the kind of guidelines and roadmap going forward for against specifics. If you measure, you make progress. If you do not measure, you have no way of knowing how you have progressed. This was a fantastic framework to look at. Now, with 14 SDGs out of 17 being impacted on agriculture, look at India as a primarily rural and agrarian economy. Look at the number of about 70% plus dependent on agriculture and allied activities. Look at the predominantly rain-fed agriculture map of India and how that kind of superimpose that over the poverty map of India. These two are so closely aligned. So looking at it from multiple angles, and because we worked primarily in rain-fed districts with smallholder farmers, 80% smallholders farmers, and our idea to engage them into mainstream business by providing that unit of scale through FPOs, we felt that the twin objectives of improving performance of rural India on the SDGs as well. I mean, we didn't have to think this is already there. And then thereby also look at our goal of rejuvenating productive landscapes equitably and sustainably. Both these visions can kind of be combined to create that enabling system. And that is where we felt that we should be addressing it. Now, if you look at so there's the FPO as a unit of scale that can address mainstream markets and buyers. There, on the other hand, is the companies or responsible business and the national guidelines on responsible business that was developed a few years ago. That's one framework that also is already in place. Now, so logically thinking, you would think that when you have corporates who are responsible business, who are buyers of produce, who are looking at sustainable supply chains, and on the other hand, you have FPOs as a unit of scale trying to address or trying to, meet the needs of these buyers, there is a huge gap that exists. So how can one is a gap in terms of understanding and what the other is capable of, and the other is in terms of addressing the actual capacity gap that exists. And if one can develop that common understanding between the two corporates, buyers or the responsible businesses and FPOs who are in this sustainable supply chain, who can be brought into the sustainable supply chain in a transparent manner with a common understanding of the realities at both ends, we could perhaps, move ahead on that greening economy vision.
Yeah, thanks, Aruna. I think fantastic. I think you've laid it out very well, and a couple of things that a framework, right, really helps us measure and act. Right, and the good thing is there are many stakeholders who are working towards a common objective, and it's really bringing them together now and easing that communication between them. So I really like the point that you talked about, that unless we measure, we can't really act in the right direction also, right? The idea is not to impose a requirement. The idea is that how can we use a framework really to facilitate growth that is sustainable, growth that helps them get integrated into value chains, right? And and when there are buyers looking, of course, buyers are also in a position to facilitate that capacity building, which smallholder farmers and FPOs would require when it comes to the sustainability conversation. So I think the measurement and closing this gap, because there is a clear requirement, and if we are talking about growth of the farmer producer organizations, we are talking an alignment meeting the requirements of these buyers, and not just meeting their requirements, but I think it adds to their own competitiveness, to their own growth, to their own resilience over a period of time. So I think the challenge or the trick here really is that how do we look at this closing of the gap, or what sort of a tool can we look at which speaks to the needs of the FPOs also, which is not too burdensome but robust enough, but at the same time also speak to the buyers who are looking to deliver on their own responsible business commitments. So just if you can take a few moments, because this is something that CRB and IFHD are looking to co-develop, if you can just talk a bit about the framework that we are thinking. Of course, we're also looking to see how we can get different stakeholders into this conversation, because by no means are we saying that this is a framework that is developed in isolation or by
Yeah.
the two organizations, but we are saying that this is supported and this is led by stakeholders who are key to this discussion. So if you just want to touch a bit upon the framework and how we are engaging with different stakeholders in the development of the framework, or our ask also to different stakeholders when we are looking at the framework development. Over to you, Aruna.
Thank you. Yeah, so from a logic point of view, I would say, okay, it's a marriage made in heaven waiting to happen if this would take place. But we also, I would like to bring in the aspect of say why. We addressed the issue of what needs to be done, but why does it need to be done? So when we're looking at climate change and the reality of climate change, and there's this all, post-pandemic and pre-pandemic situation in terms of, the whole push towards building back better, right? And so when we can kind of all of these conversations and buzz happening at the larger macro stage, and we are all but kind of actors and have our roles to play within this macro stage. We are currently looking at COP 26. So I feel all of these are it's like there is an unseen force driving us towards a certain promoting a circle of sustainability, if you had to put it like that, that involves at multiple levels, multiple stakeholders, each having their own two-bit role to play. And if there is a beautiful alignment of forces that comes together and that enables this process, and this how this circle of sustainability can then perhaps become a reality in terms of how we build back better, and how climate change and climate resilience then becomes a core agenda for all. So we do know that there are a few change makers already there. There are a few initiatives on the ground that have looked at specific value chains, have been influenced by various drivers, unseen, unknown, but somewhere operating, that has kind of aligned itself to give that push. So there is the few sustainability initiatives that I can think about, which are driven by markets in terms of the better cotton initiative, or so, responsible soya, or these kind of initiatives, perhaps small but very encouraging, and their own approach and challenges in terms of implementing. These are all lessons for us to these are all lessons for us to know of and understand better. From an implementer point of view, I can say that we've faced these challenges, we've seen this transition, we know that it works, and we only have to be able to talk the mainstream language, and engage with this whole issue of large and scale and multiple geographies, etc., etc. We have to be able to address those. And if sustainability is a core business agenda for responsible and resilient companies, they are also seeking sustainable and transparent supply chain partners. And so here's where I feel the FBOs and aligning them on a common framework, and that's where we it was serendipity, having like established the why and the what and the urgency of when, seeing the SDGs 2030 as a target. It was serendipity that Nitya and you, Devyani, came into my life to address the how and the where. IFHD's collaboration with Center for Responsible Business is in thinking and designing together the how and the where. And you bring in that kind of design thinking into it. We're basically practitioners, so we may know where the problem lies, and try to do something about it on the ground, but we don't know the macro, and we don't understand how these macros in that the what do you zoom out view and the zoom in view. So I think in that sense, this collaboration is brilliant aligning of the zoom out and the zoom in view, that we could make something like a roadmap or a guidelines that bring both the FPOs as a unit of SDGs implementation, and and corporates and responsible businesses as a consumer of that service or whatever product. So this, I feel, the framework, we're still in the thinking process. Any design and any design thinking cannot, it is always perfect in someone's mind, but unless it's out there and there are multiple people who approach it from their own angle and their own view, and highlight their concerns and their challenges, it will not be a robust framework to implement. And that is why we've already had a couple of stakeholder consultations, one with multiple stakeholders, including key, say, the government, which is would enable the policy environment, the corporate that would be a consumer of that framework, the FPOs who would basically have to implement what is required, and understand the needs of the corporates, as well as the financing mechanisms. So, banks like NABARD, etc. So we've had that one level of multi-stakeholder consultation, absorbed a lot of those inputs in the draft design that we are developing, as well as I think we've also had specific conversations with a task group of these initiatives on the ground, which are very promising, which are driven by multiple influencers, like we call them. So it's good to understand this from all these angles, and then develop a framework, and there in the collaboration, which would lay out the roadmap, which would take a milestone-based approach, which would accommodate realities of the as-is situation, which would keep in mind the aspirational goal, and then possibly utopia, but I think we can get there.
No, thanks, Aruna. First, let me echo your thoughts. And we are absolutely delighted with this partnership, because the rich experience that you bring from the ground is absolutely essential for the development of such a framework, right? Otherwise, it just becomes something that is an academic exercise that is, again, prescriptive rather than, involved in its development. So I think we are absolutely thrilled and looking forward. And we are also, and this is a tricky area to navigate, right? This is a tricky area to navigate. Let's make no bones about it. And I quite liked your analogy of a marriage made in heaven. I mean, see, whatever my experience tells me, in a marriage, everyone has to work towards it, right? Even if it's made in heaven, all partners really have to, okay, two partners, but partners really have to work together to make this work. And that's what we are looking both in the development of the framework and the application and placement of the framework, right? You very succinctly explained the process, that it's not something that we're looking to develop from the outside. What is already existing out there? Can we develop on that? Can we learn from that? Can we strengthen, what is missing? Can we take what is good and look at this? And clearly, a very important part of the framework development is also that can we involve the people who are required to apply it, right?
Yeah.
Whom it is supposed to benefit, and what do they feel about it, and how do we build their capacities to actually start applying such a framework and adopt. So we are looking forward to this development. So thanks a lot, Aruna, for taking the time to speak to us and giving this wonderful glimpse into our thinking and what we're thinking. So we would like to invite everyone to the session that we are organizing on the 28th of October at 11:45 India Standard Time. Please do register for the whole conference. Our communications team has indicated the link in the chat. So the conference is from the 27th to the 29th. The particular session on FPOs and a framework development, we are looking at October 28th. So we do look forward to seeing everyone there. And this is just the start of a conversation. And it is an iterative process. And we will continue, on this partnership and this development. So thanks a lot, Aruna. Have a lovely day and speak to you soon.
Thank you so
Okay.
much. Thank you. Wish you good luck for the conference, and I look forward to being there.
Thank you so much, Aruna. Take care then.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye bye.